Yep. That's what we're here for today. Rainbow trout. And that's a cracker. Good morning, my name's Des Taylor and I'm here in the heart of Wiltshire to fish a beautiful gravel pit by the name of Langford Fisheries. The motorway up on the top there, which is a bit of an eyesore all over the country, has actually created these fisheries, because to build those motorways we have to dig the gravel. To dig the gravel we leave a hole, we fill it up with water, and we get a fabulous fishery like this. This is quite a large water for the average trout water in this country. In fact, there seems to be nowadays too many tiny waters full of very small trout. This is a very, very nice setup. We've got a water about 6 acres, and it gives room even for boat anglers, but it gives room for the boat angler to fish all types of swims. It's not just an hole in the ground. We've got overhanging trees, we've got points like here, we've got gravel bars. When the digger pulls out the gravel, it isn't just a hole. What you've got is, as the digger pulls the gravel out, it leaves bars. So out there in the middle, I mean, I don't know all the bars in the water, but it's quite feasible that out in the middle can actually be shallower than in the side. Now, to find out these bars is obviously an advantage, because a lot of the fish will be down the side at certain times of the day, down the side of the bar, on top of the bar. If we go round the fishery, we can see that the wind's blowing towards us. So this is, I fancy this today, and that's why I've selected today. Any natural life, any buzzers, etc. coming off the bottom will be drifting into here. Any life, any insect life coming off the trees that lands on the water, it'll be coming down here again. So hopefully the trout are coming towards me and I'll be fishing in amongst feeding trout. Beautiful spots under those trees. If you notice, we've got spots where you can't fish from the bank for the boat anglers to go to, which is absolutely fabulous, and not on that many fisheries. It's lovely to have a little reserve there that no one can get from the bank. If we come round, we've got standard gravel pit type swims where there's just a shelf and over, but usually where there's a gully, it'll come shallower. If you fish in those gullies, you can catch fish. And basically all the way around there we've got trees, bars, gullies, and we've even got a lovely bay here off from this point where a lot of fish will be pushed into. Now, I mentioned the gullies in close earlier. Remember the approach to the water. As you come down to the water, be very, very careful. This shale and gravel can make a lot of noise, so come down nice and quiet, because the first few casts you could have fish very, very close indeed. Many of the time on any type of fishery, let alone a gravel pit, you can cast out and catch the fish within 2 yards, 3 yards. Cast nice and close first. And the other thing I want to impress on you is that make sure you've got a good pair of polarized glasses with you. The first reason, you can see the fish, and if you're fishing surface, imitations, lures, etc., you can see the take much better. It takes the glare off the water. But the most important, without doubt, is I don't care how good a caster you are, how long you've been doing fly fishing, certain conditions, a gust of wind, etc., the fly gets onto your flight path of your eye, and believe me that a fly smashing 20 quid's worth of Polaroids is a lot better than smashing your eyeball. So that's about the fishery, that's about the old glasses. Let's now try and catch some fish and talk about some of the gear. Right, first things first, let's get this fish out the sun into the bass bag and onto the water, because that's going to dry out and we don't want that. So let's just put it there, get a nice rock, there you go, nice and safe. That'll keep it nice and fresh. Right, let's first of all have a look at a little goodie bag of mine. And what I've got in here is all sorts of oddments that a lot of anglers just bring the basics, and it's these sort of things that can save the embarrassing moments in fishing. Let's just go through it just very quickly. There's a hook sharpener, especially on a gravel pit, this type of water, the fly, especially if you're fishing near the surf, near the bottom of the lake, you can just scratch onto a rock, bend the hook over and you've got a blunt hook. So there's the sharpener. This is a nice breeze actually, this should help us. Okay, there you go. There's the line grease. You all should know what that's for. That's for keeping the line on the surface. The opposite, the sink. I'll show you about that later when we're spooning out. That's an invention a few local lads to me use instead of a spoon. That's what I shoot the contents, what we get into the spoon or that pump into. Sponge to put the different materials, floater or sinker on, to put onto the line. Few spares from a reel. If you've got a reel, always take some spares. I'm a long way from home today. I live in Worcestershire, I'm in Wiltshire. My reel packs up. It's only usually a washer or a spring or whatever. Make sure you got it with you. Some line care just to clean the line. Here's a useful bit of kit. Actually, it's from a coarse fishing shop. I think the match anglers use it. It's a new piece of kit from abroad. And what it is, just a very, very thin spike. And what that's for, any angler fishing bit of wind, especially when you're starting up the sport, you'll have a lot of wind knots. And there's such tight knots on fine line, you can't get them out. These are brilliant. You just put them into the line, push it in, and it opens the loop out. Smashing little bit of kit there. Some more reel parts. Line spray, again, that's for helping fly. This is the stuff to spray onto the fly to keep it high in the water. Again, my safety kit for rings. If you're away from home and a ring comes off, then all I've got is some speed varnish that goes off in about half an hour, some whipping cotton and some spare rings. Very few anglers keep those. They'll moan about a ring coming off. Just carry a couple with you, spare. Bit of backing line there. Some leaders, some tapered leaders, which you need spare. We'll talk about tapered leaders later, but I've got some spare in there. Some Fuller's Earth, that's Fuller's Earth in Fairy Liquid. That again is just used as a sinking material for the line. And this little collection, I've got a toothbrush for cleaning off reels. The nice little tight spots, you get the gravel and sand which can damage the reel. There's just to clean it off. And these pens, they're coloured pens, kiddies pens, and why I'll use those is if you've got a white lure or something like that that you want to use and you think, I'd rather have a different colour, and if you haven't got another colour or you want to introduce a little bit of colour, you can actually do it with a pen without actually changing your fly. I find that very, very, very effective. Anyway, that's my little goodie bag. Piece back in. Position the landing net. The landing net is a long net, and let me just show you why. A lot of anglers, why they use these I don't know. This is the little traditional net. If you're on a gravel pit and there's a bar, you've got to bring the fish within a very, very short distance to land it. Why do that and make it awkward when you've got a net that you can push over the bar? Simple, but makes life a lot easier. And in trout fishing, it's making the things nice and easy that makes an enjoyable day. So let's get back out and see if I can catch another fish. Okay, before we cast out, let's just talk about the gear that I'm using today. Fairly standard setup. First thing, what I'm using at the front end. That's very important, obviously. It's what I just caught the trout on. It's a very small olive damsel, used all over the country this time of the year, all through the summer. In fact, there's a lot of these things swimming out there in the water. A lot of trout eat these things, so I'm using that, and as you can see, within a short time I took a trout. The leader, because it's clear and because it's bright, I'm using a very fine leader. I'm using a 3-pound leader, which I would come down to on these type of conditions, but I'd like to try and get away with, if I can, a 4 or 5-pound leader, because these fish do really fight and can break 3 pound. Some come down to 2. I personally wouldn't go down that low because a trout can easily break the line, but there I'm using a 3-pound leader. The rod and reel that I'm using today, fairly modern, typical modern setup. The reel, which is basically for me just a reservoir for holding line. I don't use the reel when playing the fish. As you saw earlier when I was playing the fish, I actually used the line. I pull on the line and bring it and let it fall to the floor. Some people use the reel. To be honest, it's totally up to you, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I like using the line rather than the reel. The handle on my rods is probably not standard, because a lot of anglers just prefer the front corks on all of my rods, whether they be light rods or like this, which is a fairly powerful rod, rated at about 7, to take sort of 7 or 8 line, which is the sort of weight of the line for the range you're casting. I always use an extension. That extension piece sits nicely against the arm and makes casting that much easier for me. But again, just like the reel, it's a personal choice. If you don't like the extension, you don't want it, don't have one. Easy to buy. You just buy the thing from any tackle shop. It just slots up the back. There's usually a plug in there. Just take the plug out and fit the cork in extension. The rod, a standard rod, it's a carbon, and this one is a fast taper. I like fast tapered rods, and if I'm using a one fly setup like this, not a team of flies, I like a fast tapered rod. It gives me good casting range, and it also gives me a nice tidy loop, which is very important. The diameters nowadays are absolutely fabulous. If we just look at the diameters of this, when you're pushing against the wind in the days when we had glass and previous to that we had cane, pushing against the wind was very, very hard compared to the lightweight thin carbons. Now the casting, I see so many people making this a real hard job, and it's not hard at all. If we remember to try and paint the ceiling. So what you do is with this arm we go up to 11 o'clock and to cast 1 o'clock out. Dead easily. Too many times I see people going flat with the rod, they're hitting all the grass, etc., and they're not getting any distance at all. That's all it is, one-handed, look. Back, out. Right? So let's see if we can cast out. Right? Fairly effortless. The amount of time I see people doing this, oh, there's no need for any of that. All we've got to do is lift it up, push, lift, push, lift, push. Remember, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and out. Dead easy. Do that sort of distance in one push. Look, over you come, 1 o'clock, out again. Effortless. Let's see if we can catch a fish. I think I just had a slight pluck then, actually. Send it out. Actually, this wind's quite awkward now because it's blowing across me and sending the fly across the face. So these glasses are more important in these conditions than ever. The line, The line I'm using today is a weight forward. It's a weight forward, and the reason it's called a weight forward is because it's weighted, as it says, at the forward, right at the front. And you've got a thin taper at the back end, you've got a thick taper at the front end, and that gives the weight for casting. There's numbers of lines, double tapers, the weight forward, what we're using, the double taper, all the various tapers, they're self-descriptive. The double taper, that's got a taper at the back, which is a thick taper, then it goes to a thin taper, then it comes thick again. What that is ideal for, that design makes it ideal for stalking fish, such as if you're fishing over there, then you see a fish just plop up there and you want to raise the line off the water, the design makes it very easily to change direction and cast. So you've raised it from there to there, it's dead easy. With a weight forward it's a lot more difficult. In these conditions, nigh on impossible. I'm going down with the wind now into that corner. If you notice, what I've got is, I've got a pan net here. All I've done is I've put it on a rod rest, an angle lock here, which turns it 90 degrees, and I'm just putting the line into the net. And the reason I'm doing that, on a grass bank, I probably wouldn't bother, no problem at all, just make sure you keep your feet off there. But on a gravel pit like today, if you put the line onto these stones, then you can do the line a lot of damage. Actually, I had a little touch then. So, weight forward line, damsel, 3 pound leader. There we go. What I'll do now, I'll actually show you a cast. With this wind, it's turned round completely actually. It was blowing nicely this way, now it's turned round. And it makes it very awkward because when you lift the rod, the line is actually being blown towards you. Now there's 2 ways of getting around that. You can either come over there and cast like that, or do what I'm going to do now. And what you're doing is make the wind the right way, because, okay, if it's coming across me that way, which is a disadvantage, and we want it that way, right? If we turn round, okay, it's actually in our favour now, right? It's blowing, the wind is blowing it away from me. Now obviously it's no good casting out there, we'll let it on the back retrieve, on the back cast, right? So we're casting out and then let it go on the back cast. Exactly the same, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, but instead of casting out on the front, we actually cast out on the back. That's a very useful tip for when the wind is like this. Dead easy, just practice it without a fly on. Tip here, that I see a lot of anglers, when they get to this point, they don't know how to get it off. They're chucking it up in the air, getting in all sorts of problems, right? What you need to do is roll cast. How to roll cast? Come up with a rod right above you and then hit it forward and the line's rolled, right? There you go. From there, push the rod forward to there. Okay, so there you go, like so. And out we go. See if we can get a take. Speeding the retrieve up a bit. Giving it little jerks like this, damsel. That's how a damsel come through the water. I'm having little plucks. Just sort of grabbing at it. This just shows how actually cagey they can be in these conditions. Nice and easy. You see, that's going out there because I'm using the right line to the rod. Now I'm using an 8, a line 8 there. That's the weight basically. There's a lot of technical details that we could talk all day about lines, but basically if we talk about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines, what you're doing is 5, the lower the number, the lighter the weight. The higher the number, the heavier the weight. Normally, the higher the weight, the farther you can cast. And it's no good having a 5 line in conditions like this with wind. Out you go. I see so many anglers trying to get that distance. They're like window screen wipers on a car with a rod. They're going like this, boof, out, and they get a short distance. Take it nice and easy, just like I'm doing. Fishing's about enjoyment. Oh, I had a small touch then. They just touch it. No, that one's in. That was better. That just tipped it twice actually. Oh, this feels a better fish actually. That just tipped it. Bonk, bonk. Oh yeah, this is a better fish. That just touched it. Then touch it again. Keep a nice tight line on these fish, especially in these windy conditions, because the wind can actually make the line go slack. Because it's a very thick line, the fly line itself. So there we go. This feels a nice fish. When it sees me, it's probably going to go. Here she comes. Oh, right. Oh, this is a better fish. Here she goes. Of all the fishing I've done, this is one of my favourites. It really is. There's no fish at these weights on this gear that is so enjoyable. It really is fantastic sport, and I really must impress on all of you to give this a go. This is a nice fish. This is probably a couple of pounds. This. Look at this, not giving in. As soon as it sees me, whoa! Look at this. Fabulous, fabulous. You see how I'm playing this? When it wants line, I give it line through my hands. But there you go. When I bring it up, this finger here by the butt, the line's coming through, you see? And now I'm pulling with the other hand. See if we can get it up. There you go. Not so far away now. Oh, that fought really well. Come on, my beauty. Gorgeous. That is a nice fish. In fact, that's a beauty. Look at that for a fish. Desi bags up. Here we go. Got the hook caught in the net. We'll take that out first. So we take that out, dispatch the fish nice and cleanly. That's a lovely fish. Look at the tail. There's a, let's just, well, there is an absolutely gorgeous rainbow trout. When the Americans gave us this little baby to stock in our waters, they did us a good favour. The brown trout's our native, and this is an American import, and it's an absolute fabulous fish. Look at the colours. Absolutely fabulous game fish. What I'm going to do, you see why they call the rainbow? Look at the rainbow down its lateral line there. Just a bit of fin damage that hasn't healed up from when it was in the trout cages. That fish probably hasn't been in there that long. What I'm going to do, I'm going to spoon it, and that entails a spoon. This is a long spoon, I've got a long spoon just in case you're spooning a big fish. Sometimes the gut's this far on a small fish, sometimes it's that deep, so get a long spoon. I'm going to go in, I'm going to try and get in there what's the contents of its stomach, and that can tell us what it's feeding on. At various times of the year, trout are eating different things. They may be damsels, which we're catching on now. There may indeed be damsels inside there. There could be various buzzers, little tiny buzzers, lots of things he could be eating, all sorts of things. So if we want to try and imitate that, what we'll do is spoon it out, and if we find something in there interesting that we think we can imitate, that obviously the trout, he wouldn't be on his own eating those. There's probably a hatch of something, and there's a lot of rainbows in that area eating that hatch. We'll try and find out. Let's see if there's anything interesting in there. Quite possibly might not be anything in there because it looks as though it hasn't been in there that long. We push that into the gut, turn it round, in there, looks as though it's empty to me. Not a thing. No, not a thing. I'm smelling there's a bit of brown stuff there. I thought that might be actually a bit of trout pellet, which I would imagine there's still going to be a little bit of trout pellet in there because that's a stock fish that probably hasn't been in there that long. Right, let's put it in the bass. That's going to make fabulous eating. About 2.5 pounds. Let's put that in the bass. Like so. Okay. There's 2 of the 5. There's a five fish limit on here. Right. Let's sort the swim out. We'll put the landing net in the correct spot, and we'll get this damsel out again. I'm going to stick with the damsel because that spooning of that fish told me that it had been in there only a short time. It wasn't on the natural insect life of the water, got an empty stomach, and to be honest, the little bit of stuff that was in there I thought smelled like trout pellets. So it was a fish that had only recently, probably yesterday or the day before, had been transported from the trout cage, thrown in, and the only thing he'd been used to was eating trout pellets. There's an helicopter that's trying to drown me out. Looks like it's flying into the sun. Okay, what we'll do, we'll get out and see if we can catch another one. That trout probably took the damsel, probably never seen a damsel in his life, but he took it just in pure anger. It came past its nose and took it. Right, let's get this back in here because that can knock the line round, as I said. And away we go. I've put some sinking material on the line, so that damsel is actually going the depth. I've got about a 12-foot leader on. It's probably fishing, when I've let it rest down, it's probably fishing somewhere about 6-7 foot down. The weight forward line is a floating line. If we need to go, which means quite simply it's just floating on the surface. Now if we need to go any deeper, we have all sorts of lines that go to various depths. Starting from the surface, we have intermediate, we have slow sink, fast sink, an ID lead core which zonks it right down to the bottom. In other words, although on this system I've got a floating line and only the leader sinking, on other systems you'll have the whole line sinking, because not only will this line be the casting weight, it'll also be the governor that sends wherever depth you want to go to. So if we're having no trout on the top, in the top 6 foot, then we need to go deeper. Then if it's 30 foot deep, we can't use a 30-foot leader. What we're going to do is use a line that goes down there, right? So I always carry a range of lines. I don't just come to a water with a floating line. I don't care what the conditions are. The conditions can change. It could go dull today, it could rain, fish could go down, or they could come up, depending on whatever the conditions, I would use those lines to try and find those fish. One important thing, when you are using a sinking line, and indeed using this lure here, or this imitation here, when you're resting the swim and letting it go down, count. Just count down so you know that when you start retrieving, if you catch a fish, the next time out, you count again and you go into the same level that you caught that trout. Let's have another go. The wind's blowing this out. I must really be careful with this because treading on this line, these lines are not cheap. Don't be too anxious to bring it out. Bring the fly up through the water, roll cast, and away we go. That wind's quite difficult now, it's still going out there. There's a take. Oh yeah, we're in. And that feels a nice fish. Yeah, that's going well. It really is. In these conditions, it must have been a hell of a problem for the owner, Paul Knight, to get fish in condition, in these hot conditions, to get them in fighting order. As you can see there, this one's pulling the string as soon as it sees me. Pulling the string nicely. They've done a grand job here, Paul and Alan between them, getting the fish. So when they put them in here, they're in fighting condition. Look at the power of this one, just going along that bar. By the look of that fish, it looked sort of £2 plus job. Absolutely super fish, going really well. Let's see if we can net him this time. Just jockeying from left to right, there you go. Look at the power of that fish. Beautiful. Beautiful colours. Absolutely gorgeous. This is what it's all about. Bending the rod. This is what anglers come here for. Paul and Alan are supplying this stamp of fish for you to catch, and I'm enjoying catching them, to be honest. Fighting really well, this one. He's not far away. Fighting really well. He's not so far away now. We've got him nearly beat. Let's bring him along the surface. Come on, my old son. Into the net. Yes! That's another top class fish. Look at that. That's a beauty. That is a beauty. Look at that. It's a cracker. Absolute cracker. Beautiful condition. Absolutely beautiful. Flies come out actually. That must have been hooked very, very lightly. Look at that. Absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. The conditions aren't ideal for trouting. I mean, we've got clear water, we've got sun, but we've got a stocking level that even in these conditions we can catch fish. That is an absolutely beautiful rainbow trout. Absolutely fabulous. Lovely. Just a little bit of wear on the tails, but that's a good tail. On so many fisheries around the country, some of the fish look absolutely awful. There's no tails on them at all, but at this fishery we've got fish with tails, and that's why they're fighting. Beautiful. Look at the markings, absolutely fabulous. into the bass. There you go. Lovely. Right. Back in with the net. Let's get the fly. And let's see if we can get yet another. We're looking good for a limit back, to be honest. Looking really good. Nice and easy. No effort. Out we go. Let it sink. The retrieve that seems to be getting them is a figure 8. I've been trying different retrieves. I've been trying the jerky retrieve, which is a pretty standard retrieve for a damsel, which is a jerky retrieve like that, very, very short jerks. But the one that seems to be producing today is the figure 8, which is held against the rod there, over onto the finger, catch the line, pull it, let it go. You see? And you can be as fast or as slow as you like. Grab it with 3 fingers, grab it with 2 fingers. That's altering the speed that that fly is coming in, that damsel nymph. There you go. That's the retrieve that seems to be going. Too many anglers seem to be doing this nowadays. It's typical lure, strip back. And although that does catch fish, it's not the only retrieve. And on waters like this, where nymphs can actually beat the lure on days, that retrieve is the one that can catch a lot of fish. You can do so much with it. Speed it up. There you go. Let it down. Takes a bit of practice. If you do it all day, it can make the back of the hands ache, but it's certainly worth it. There you go. Learn to do that, and you can catch a lot of fish. Alter it. I'm doing all sorts of things there. Look, I'm figure 8. Slow pull. Back to the jerk. Long pull. Fast jerk. Figure of 8. And then when the line is ready for casting, don't just rip it out of the water. That damsel has got to come from about 10 foot down, lift it up slowly, and you can get a take. Sometimes you can see the trout take it. There you go. Roll cast, out again. Nice and easy. It's supposed to be an enjoyable sport, so make it enjoyable. Nice and easy. Out we go. There you go. Beautiful. Let's just let that sink again. Sometimes actually when the wind is really blowing, which the wind's dropped down now, making it easier to cast, but sometimes you can just leave that floating line and let it work itself. Let a bow form in it, and then retrieve. And on a lot of occasions, when there's a bow in the line, actually when you start retrieving it, when it just comes around the corner and changes direction, that is an absolute super time for a take. So you've got a bow in the wind, it's coming around the bow, it's straightening up, bang, you've got it. Let's come back again. Just had a slight little touch then, little knock, lift it up, roll. There we go. Let it sink a bit more. There's a few fish topping, but not always those fish people see them jumping around and think that they're automatically feeding fish. They're not necessarily. Every water, this time of year, especially the heat that we're having over the last couple of years, a lot of fish are travelling with Argulus, which is like a small type leech. There's no great problems with them, but the only thing is they're trying to leap out the water, actually get under those trees and things like that, and they'll jump up and almost go into the branches and leap around trying to get rid of this Argulus on the body. So don't automatically think because there's trout leaping everywhere and if you're not getting a take that you're doing something wrong. Try a slower retrieve this time. Nice and slow figure 8. Speed it up a bit. There you go. Actually the wind's just starting to pick up again. The wind's all over the place. First it's blowing left to right, then it's right to left, then it's calm, then it's quite blustery, so it's sort of changing conditions. Out we go again. Let it sink. I won't let it sink so far this time. To be honest, I've started to struggle a bit and the conditions have changed to, well, it's even gone dull for the first time today. It's really starting to cloud over, although there's plenty of openings. It's gone quite cloudy. I think what I'll do something quite drastic. What I'll do, I'll go from the nymph that's done quite well, but there's the fish that we are catching. I have doubts whether at least 2 of them, whether they've took the damsel for a damsel or just took it on pure aggression. It has gone slow. So what I'll try to do now is I'll sort out through my box and I'll put a small lure on, a mini lure. Now to be honest, a lot of anglers condemn lure fishing, but I'll be honest that whether it's a nymph, whether it's an imitation of any form, whether it's a lure, whatever, they all have their own days. We seem to be on the flight path of every airplane in the world, but I rate anything that's catching the trout. I rate. I don't degrade lures, and I rate them just as highly as any other type of form that you're catching the trout on. So don't knock it, give it a try, and that's what I'm going to do now. It's gone quite dull, and I'll just put a lure through. But while I'm actually sorting out one, let's have a look and pinpoint some of my favourite flies. There you go. I think it's fair to say that there are literally thousands and thousands of flies. I've got my own favourite. Over a period of time, you'll get your favourites. So let's have a look in my boxes and have a look at some of my favourites. When I spoke about using a lure, I tend to use mini lures. There's all sorts there. There's whiskies, appetizers, very small vivas, even things that sort of almost like lure type damsels. Fish imitation lures, all sorts of goodies in there. I think I'm going to go for a little appetizer and see what that can produce. Here's a more traditional box, a very traditional box actually, with soldier palmers, blackened peacocks, chompers. Those are a nice little favourite of mine, the little chomper. It was designed by Dick Walker when he was very much into trout fishing, and that imitates all sorts of things. It imitates a small shrimp or corixa, all sorts of things out there in the water. And although they look small, some of those traditional flies can produce some very, very big fish, and lots of limit bags. There's a very old favourite that I think originally started out as a sea trout fly, and now has become very popular over the years with the still water trout angler. That's the Alexandra. This is my favourite nymphs and buzzers. All sorts of goodies there. There's all sorts of beetles, very tiny buzzers. All these little tiny buzzers are imitations of the things that are sort of coming up there off the bottom, coming to the surface. Sometimes on a flat, calm day, those buzzers just can't break the surface film and they'll hang there under the surface. And these little tiny buzzers are absolutely superb at grease line methods, taking fish from under the surface. There's also suspender buzzers, which are these, got a little polystyrene ball on the top, and they actually sit on the surface. And this particular wallet, it's one that if I'm moving around a lake, I'll actually just throw a few of my favourites in here. This wallet actually changes by the session. What I'll tend to do is fill this up of things that I might need, save carting all this around. There's all sorts of things. There's puppies, lures, which are absolutely fabulous for fisheries that have got double-figured 12, 13, 14 pound trout. These do produce those things. Again, few buzzers, little tiny black buzzers, green buzzers. They can actually change. These buzzers need to be different colours because you can spoon a trout out that's feeding on a buzzer and it can actually be taking black buzzers. Within half an hour there can be another hatch that's green. So all these different kind of buzzers will all catch the fish. So in there you go. There's some large nymphs, my favourite. You can see that in my wallet that I actually use for a lot of my fishing, there's a lot of damsels, and the reason that is because this summer and no doubt this autumn, as long as the weather's like this, in fact damsels are in the water all the year round, but at this time of the year, absolutely a fabulous fly to use, a fabulous nymph. There's some mayflies earlier in the year that was producing a lot of fish, and I've caught some real nice fish on those. And these, well, just another couple of favourite flies. This one's an interesting one. It was designed by Bob Church. It was designed for Avington when in the days that was producing massive fish, and he calls it the Westwood bug. I've had a lot of success that on myself, but mainly for stockies, fish that have just been stuck in the water for you to catch, and they come out straight away. They're fairly easy to catch, and that one there is a real producing lure. Anyway, let's put on a small appetizer. So there we go, a very famous lure, the appetizer. Let me just get my line. Check if there's no wind knots. That's knots that's formed wind and they fly looping over and forming a knot in the line. Famous granny knot that weakens the line, and if you hook a fish with a granny knot in, we've talked about something like about 75% reduction in strength, so that's not a lot of good. So there you go, 7-turn clinch knot. There you go. I'll tell you a trick that I do sometimes. If that's not leaded enough, what you can actually do is put a small split shot right on the line, right by where the eye of the hook is, and that will give it weight to send it down. But that's already weighted, so what we'll do, we'll try that in the standard form first and see if we can get a take. Kind of like a mill pond now. In the time that it's took me to change from a nymph to a lure, we've gone to flat calm conditions. So it's actually typical of a day try all sorts of things, because for half an hour you can have a fish, 2 fish on a small nymph, then you're not having anything, so you try a lure, back to a nymph, small nymph, different types of nymphs. Indeed, there might be a buzzer hatch on there. You see the little black buzzers, or whatever colour, they'll always look black at a distance. You see them coming up, and you think, right, let's give a buzzer a try. If that's what's coming off, give them a go. I'll tell you what I have done in the past for big fish. Without doubt, the big fish will move and feed a lot slower. If you tend to whack a lure back and strip it, what you tend to get is the small stocky fish. If you tend to fish it very slowly, what you can still get the small stockies. I'm not saying that every cast or slow retrieve will get you a big fish, but it gives you a better percentage of getting a big fish. A 4 or 5 pounder won't chase round like a 1 pounder. So if it's a slow retrieve, up it comes, takes it, you've got a chance of actually attracting a better fish. But at this moment in time, with the changing conditions, all I'm interested in is seeing if I can get a take. I'll tell you what I will have to do. I'm that busy selecting me fly that I've forgotten the most important thing. My eyes. Slow retrieve, quick retrieve. Oh, yeah. Fast retrieve, straight away in. Oh Christ, look at that run in. Christ. There was a typical take off a very, very fast retrieve off a lure. And it looks to me like a typical size fish that you get on the lure. Only a small fish. But on a day like this, when conditions can be hard, it's nice to catch a fish. Even that size. In fact, it's a nice fish. It's only a small fish, but it's a nice fish. Look at that. One thing about trout, it doesn't matter how big they are, they can always fight. Look at this. Come on, my beauty. Whoop! Flying fish. There you go. Yeah, lovely little fish. Absolute belter. Number 4. And the lure. Let's see where he's got it. He's got line all around his fins. Hang on, there we go. Right. There you go. That was a typical retrieve I made there. Very fast strip back on a lure, and that is the sort of thing you catch. Super little fish. So it was a wise decision. Fishing, I would say, from when I first started is definitely getting harder. We're having to try different things, so that's a welcome fish. As I said earlier, I don't condemn the lure. If that's what it takes to catch a fish, that's what it takes. And that's what it's just took. I was actually struggling there on a nymph. I thought, well, hang on, let's try the lure, and bingo, we're in. But look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Right, in we go. 4 beautiful fish, real top class stamp. Out with the net again. Always make sure the net goes back. The amount of times I see guys so eager to get out, they don't place the net and they've took the fish up the bank, and all of a sudden they hook another fish, and then they're trying to find they're trying to find a landing net, and you can guarantee that it's the best fish of the day. Out you go. Lovely. Put this back in there again. It really can knock your lines about, the gravel, but modern days lines, they can take a lot of beating off stones and rocks, so but it's best to look after them if you can. Let's try another fast, not the most traditional type of fishing, but to be honest, if you're struggling to catch a few fish and you want to catch a few fish, then you know what's tradition, you know. It's 1990, and if we've got methods and tactics that can catch these fish, give them a go. Don't condemn them. Let it sink down. That can catch fish. You fast retrieve, let it sink, or not just the stripping. Like I showed that figure 8, you can actually use the figure 8 on the lure. Just the same, it doesn't have to be a nymph. There you go. That's coming back really quick. Roll cast out. I'll see if I can push it a bit farther this time. There you go. A bit farther out. After taking that fish on the lure very, very quickly, I'm now pushing this lure out and getting no response at all. But to be honest, I enjoy that type of fishing when you've taken a fish on a nymph and then you take one a lure, a floating line, sinking line, whatever. It's nice that you've got to think about your fishing, because to be honest, if you're paying sort of whatever price the various fisheries charge, then there's nothing worse than fishing a water that you cast out 5 times, you got 5 fish, and you're back to the clubhouse. Today I've had to think about my fishing. I had to use various ways, and it looks as though I'm going to have to change again, because this is looking a struggle. I'm not catching, so to be honest, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reel this in and I'm going to edge my bits. What I'm going to do, I'm going to fish a team of flies, small flies, at 3 different depths, and see if I can get my last fish for the limit, because I'd really like to get a limit bag the first time down here. I like to get a limit bag every day, but especially first time on this lovely water, it'd be nice to walk away with a limit bag. So we'll reel this lot in. And what we'll do, I've got a rod set up here with a team of flies, which can be an absolute super way of fishing. Very simple. It's a tapered line coming from various strengths, sort of 10, 11 pound down to 8, 6, 5, 4, just as it comes from the top. It tapers down from heavy line down to the bottom on fine line, a tapered line. And what we've got from the top, we come on the connection on the top, which will be fishing the surface. What we've got is a suspender buzzer that'll be sitting on the surface. Further down the line, we've got a nice little traditional there, the blacking peacock, only a small little imitation there, but catches a lot of fish. And right on the end, I've put the damsel slightly bigger, what we were catching the fish on this morning, and that's the damsel. I've used a leaded damsel, and to be perfectly frank, the reason why I like that leaded, it straightens the line out and makes this go out a lot easier. So let's give this a go. The rod I'm using this time is softer, and the reason that is, it forms a bigger loop and makes it easier not to get tangled. So let's give this a go. Nice and easy, nice and slow with the team. I'm going a lot slower with the cast, a lot slower. If you start really giving it fast, small loops, you're going to tie all those flies up and in a hell of a mess. So keep the cast nice and slow. Remember what I said earlier, back to 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, but much slower. This time, instead of being fast, we're going much slower with the rod. Okay? On this team of flies, bring them up through the depths very slowly, very slowly. Got a piece of weed on the one there. Oh, it's come off now. Right, out we go again. Light's starting to go slightly. It is a bit cloudy, but it is starting to knock on in the day, so it'd be nice if I could get that last fish. This is hopefully my banker. Just keep twitching. Just had a slight knock then. It's a little knock. There's a take. Ooh, hang on. There we go. That's hanging low. That's hanging low. Feels a bit better than the last one. Running to the left. Can't really tell. Oh, that one pulled me a bit. Oh no, hang on, that one's on the surface. That looks a decent fish as well. Looks over 2. Oh no, it's not over 2, it's probably over 3 or 4. He's got weed on his nose. So he must have dived really deep. Certainly my things weren't down to the... This one's going to go off again in a second. That's a fair fish. Very steady. Oh, he's took the damsel. Right on the end, I can see the other 2 flies. Can you see those 2 flies dangling up? Oh, he's gone. Here we go. Swim right in the net. Jesus. Absolute belter. That's probably about 3.5, that one, I should think. Maybe 3.5, 4 pounds. Oh, look at that for a marked fish. Absolutely beautiful. Few lice on it and weed. That fish is obviously took, when it took, it dived really deep, because at the end of the day I'm not fishing on the bottom out there. I've not been catching weed, so that's dived straight into weed when it took. There we go. That's a beautiful fish. Look at that. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Let's get the... I think the fly's come out. Yeah, it has. Christ, I must have had that up very, very lightly. And it was on the damsel. Would you believe that I was taking fish earlier on the damsel, couldn't catch on the damsel, changed. I've put 2 other flies on there, the suspender, the black and peacock, a damsel just to turn them over, if anything, just to turn those two little flies over so I'm not getting tangles. And what do? Go and catch it on the damsel. So, well, that just about tops the day. A beautiful fish, cracking fish to finish off from a limit of 5. So there we go, look at those colours, absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. That's a fabulous fish. So right, let's get these fish, wash them off, and let's have a look at the bag. It's what I term as a mixed bag of fish, and what that is we've got smaller fish, but even the small fish, they're still a fair size, still over the pound mark, still pull your string. We've got a couple of middleweight fish, very nice fish, 2.5 pound, 3 pound fish. This one's a beauty, deep fish. That one's longer, that's a deep silver fish, lovely fish. And then we've got it topped off by this absolute belter. Look at that. To summarise the day, it's not been easy, but it's been very enjoyable. It's the sort of day that I enjoy. It's the sort of day where I don't arrive at the water and catch my fish very quickly. I've had to work at them all day, right from early morning, right until late afternoon now. I've had to work, I've had to change the flyers, change the lines, and in the end, I've come up with this fabulous bag of fish. Just using your head a bit, and we've cracked the day. If I'd have tried one method, if I'd have stayed with a damsel, I may have ended up with a couple of fish. On the lure, I may have ended up with a couple of fish. But as it is, I've got an absolute fabulous bag of fish. Absolutely fabulous. So there it is. That is, to me, what trout fishing is all about. Having your string pulled and looking at a fabulous limit bag like that. Hope you've learned off today. Hope you've enjoyed yourself today, because I certainly have.